Hey guys, my name is Cicabeot1. Back in May of 2020, I decided to rearrange my room a bit, and since then, I've been tempted to do some sort of room tour or video showing off my gaming setup. The thing is, that's also constantly changing as I've been able to get my hands on new solutions for certain consoles, and I have a feeling if I wait for things to get static, this video is never gonna get made. So you know what? This is my setup as of October 2020 when I recorded this. Cue the Danganronpa music. Here in the back wall is where I house most of my games. This big shelf is for console stuff that goes on a DVD or Blu-ray sized case. This thinner shelf on the left is for cartridges, jewel case games, and DS/3DS. I got end labels for the N64 games off of Etsy, and I'm glad I did. They look really nice on a shelf. I didn't have the system growing up, but I was lucky enough to scoop up a couple complete in-box titles at a reasonable price. I have no idea what I'm going to do with the boxes when I run out of space, but for now, I want to display them. The games in question are Cruisin' USA and Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Complete in box isn't important to me at all, I just think it's cool if I can get it. I display my modest Game Boy collection using this acrylic nail polish stand from Amazon. Got the idea from my life in gaming. In fact, I got a lot of my ideas with how to hook up my consoles from my life in gaming, but we'll get back to that. It is easy for the cartridges to gather dust, so maybe I should be using plastic cases for these games to protect them. We'll see if I want to go through that undertaking in the future. And in the IKEA box thing here, I have some of my handhelds on rose-colored gaming stands, just so they look nice. They make stands for many different systems and controllers, so if you're into that, I'd say you can't go wrong with them. Right now, it's a Game Boy Advance SP, a Game Boy Color, DS Lite, new 3DS XL, and PSP 3000. I have other handhelds, but they're stored away in this nightstand due to redundancies. But where are my PSP games? Over here in this little shelf, because it's currently the most convenient place for them due to the odd size of the cases. This unit also houses most of my DVDs and Blu-rays, and also there's Blu-ray box sets of the first two phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because physical media is fun. Finally, there's a couple box sets for some old cheesy horror movies, because it wouldn't be me if I didn't have these. This big bookshelf here is where my bed used to be before my room change-up, and its purpose has changed over time. At the moment, I display my amiibo here, because it makes the most sense to put them here. I also have my office stuff here, very important since at the time of filming I am working from home. Not gonna linger on this too much because I don't want to get doxxed. My wired controllers I consistently use sit here because otherwise they take up too much space on the console shelves. It's actually more convenient than I thought it'd be. This is the Brawler 64, a controller made by Retro Fighters for the N64 that has a more modern layout and better feeling stick than the original controller. I didn't grow up with the N64 controller, and while I don't hate using it now, I'm glad to have this option for games I feel would work better for it. This Dreamcast controller here is also from Retro Fighters. This is worth it just to make sure my hands don't feel claustrophobic using the official controller. Nothing special about the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube controllers, although I do have a GameCube on the shelf for display. I'll get into why later. DVD box sets of The Simpsons seasons 1 through 18, the entire Scott Pilgrim book series, which I haven't actually read yet, and an action replay disc for the GameCube, which I mostly use to run Swiss. I'm not a dirty cheater, I promise. And the bottom shelf is for cables. Too many cables, in fact. Also where my Elgato resides, because I don't exactly have an optimal setup to keep it plugged in and recording everything I play. I use a laptop after all. This cabinet over here houses more accessories and controllers, which I recently started putting in Ziploc bags to keep the wires from tangling up. And there's more space in this ottoman under my desk. In an apartment like this, I'm gonna take advantage of any space I have. And now, the meat of my game room. The TVs and consoles. I originally had this big TV throughout college and when I initially moved into this place, back when I only had a handful of consoles, or maybe arm load. I later got a smaller flat screen TV that my brother wanted to get rid of, so I took it to hook up certain consoles and save room. That, however, is not the TV I'm showing here. That TV I got from my brother eventually started having problems where it would adjust the volume and picture input on its own, and I can't deal with that. This one is a little bigger and nicer. When I had the hand-me-down though, it and the desk were originally positioned where my bed currently is, meaning my TVs were on opposite sides of the room, which in turn meant I would have to drag this recliner according to which console I wanted to play. You can see that sort of perspective in the 2 top 20 videos I made this year. Every other time I've filmed in this room, I've sat in the chair positioned roughly like it is now, if that makes any sense. Anyway, that inconvenience is what inspired me to change my room layout in the first place, so now I can keep my recliner in one place regardless of when I want to to play, and it has worked out for me tremendously. And here's what each TV contains. This big one has a unique TV stand designed to be set in a corner. Got it for cheap because the previous owner was trying to sell it off their curb. I have it standing up like this to store yet more cables that I don't use underneath it, as well as this Wii Rock Band drum kit. I actually got this at a retro store last year. Same with this PS3 turntable controller for DJ Hero. I was always interested in playing these games, and they are so much fun. In the back, I have a bunch of useless junk, and I'm not just talking about this Retron. Okay, honestly, I think the Retron 1 HD is fine for me for now. I'm still new at collecting for NES, and I just wanted something to play the cartridges. I got this at a local convention just as the world was starting to go to hell. I do want to upgrade to something better at some point, possibly a Retron 5, although I don't know from experience if its video output is better. Although if I want to go for quality over quantity, I'd probably go for the AVS from Retro USB for my NES fix. But for now, it's garish outlined TMNT2 for me. When I want to use it, I plug it directly into the second HDMI port on the TV, though most of the time that slot is occupied by my Roku stick, because I've been streaming on Hulu and Netflix a lot lately. For some reason, plugging my USB directly into my TV isn't enough to power it, so I plug it into this table lamp. Yep, my TV can't provide sufficient power to my streaming stick, but a Target lamp can. I clearly don't understand electrical engineering. To the right of the big TV, I have my tower of HDMI consoles, in order of release. Xbox 360, PS3, Wii U, PS4, Xbox One, and then my Switch to the side of my desk, just cause that's where it fit best. These are all hooked up with HDMI into the 6-in 1-out switcher from KLKE. I used a 5-in 1-out switcher for a while, but it often had problems detecting video signals after a while. I was glad to get rid of it. I have the output going into an HDMI splitter to strip the HDCP protection from the PS3 and PS4. This would ordinarily prevent you from sending an HDMI signal from these consoles to a capture card since they're also Blu-ray players. You can turn it off for the 4, but that disables Blu-ray playback, so ultimately this is more convenient. Plus, this already makes these consoles readily available to plug my Elgato in to start recording. This smaller TV right here is where things start getting interesting. I have a riser here to house my mini consoles, NES Classic, SNES Classic, and Genesis Mini. The NES and Genesis are plugged into another 6-in 1-out switcher, same brand, but why is the SNES not plugged into the switcher? Because the thing's developed a quirk where it doesn't want to work properly if it's plugged into a switcher. It needs to be plugged in directly to the TV to power correctly, and I'm not sure why. At least I can play it and record it if I do desire. Besides, the rest of the switcher is taken up by these, my tower of 5th and 6th generation consoles. With room to grow, question mark? I have different solutions for hooking up each of these consoles, since you're not supposed to hook up composite to a flat screen TV. I mean, you can, but you can do better. This N64 down here is hooked up with S-Video cables from Retro Access. That's the best it can do on modded S-Video. Maybe someday I'll have this modded for RGB, but I have a later model, and it would probably be pretty expensive to get the solution that works and hire someone to install the board, so it's low priority. I used generic brand cables before, but these ones from Retro Access give a better picture with less interference. I'm pretty happy with them. Just be aware that this company typically sells stuff in bursts and takes a while to ship, and they're probably not the only source of high-quality S-Video cables for Nintendo consoles. Shop around, see what you like. The cables are plugged into this fragile-looking device called the RetroTank 2X. It's an upscaler that accepts composite, S-Video, and component, and line doubles 240p and 480i up to 480p, while outputting in HDMI. Well, mini HDMI to standard HDMI. There are other versions, a Pro model that supports scan lines, a budget model that has no component if you don't need it, and one other I'll go over in a bit. Next up is my Dreamcast. For a bit I had this hooked up by S-Video cables, but then I found out the system can do VGA at best. Pretty unusual for any console, really, and it allows for most of the library to output in 640 by 480, which is awesome. I have it set up with the Kuro from Behar Bros. They sell a lot of different Dreamcast VGA solutions based on consumer needs. The one I have is pretty low frills, no scan lines, no RGB SCART output or input, just a VGA box, with the RCA audio converted to a 3.5mm style plug so I can actually hear games. And this is converted again to HDMI through an adapter, so I can actually record Dreamcast games in good quality. Pretty nice. I just hope I can figure something out if I somehow get one of the few games that doesn't support VGA output, and since documentation on that info is hard to find, that's entirely possible. PS2, hooked up by HD Retrovision component cables. This company is pretty reputable and makes various component cables for a variety of systems, even those where component support doesn't exist. It has something to do with converting an RGB signal, I think. They're also making Dreamcast cables, but no one knows when they're coming out because they haven't said anything in a while, but anyway, these bad boys are plugged into a component switcher by Believe, which then feeds into the RetroTink 2X Pro multi-format, a recently released alternative to the Pro model that supports 480p pass-through, something other models aren't really able to do. However, there are differences from the other models that make this not quite a jack-of-all-trades. I'd look up what everything does if you're interested in something like this. I picked this up over something like an OSSC because I felt it was right for me for ease of my setup. Plus, I doubt I'd really be able to use 960p on a TV advertised for 720p. The other RetroTink products can't properly handle 480p, even in pass-through mode, so before, I would have to plug my PS2 into different things depending on the game I was playing. PS1 games? RetroTink. 480i PS2 games? RetroTink. 480p PS2 games? Component box. With this, I can just leave it plugged into the box and I don't have to think about it or unplug my lonely N64. As a bonus, this is how I hook up my Xbox, through the component box to the RetroTink M. Unlike the PS2, all my Xbox games support 480p, so I don't have any inconveniences there. But it's nice to know I can just leave this alone, and with a firmware update, it can even support 720p and 1080i, which I wasn't even expecting, so I don't have to turn off 720p mode to play Tony Hawk's Underground 2, thank God. I do think I could do better with the cables for this console, though. Right now, it's the cheap kind you can easily find on eBay. For some reason, no one currently makes high-quality Xbox component cables, so there's a device called the Xbox to Wii, which allows you to use more readily available Wii component cables. Helps since that HD Retrovision makes those. That might be the route I go in the future. And lastly, GameCube. I specifically bought another GameCube to do this because the one I had before didn't have a digital out port that allows you to use GameCube component cables. Not that that's what I'm using, because those cost upwards of $300, and making any sort of replacement is so difficult that not even the usual suspects like Tomy have stepped in to replicate them. Instead, I'm using something called a Carby, which converts the digital signal to HDMI. There's a similar product called the GCHD Mark II that allows for digital audio and Wii component compatibility, but it's double the cost of the Carby, and I don't need those extra features anyway. It's just nice to finally be able to play Mario Sunshine in glorious 480p after all these years, even though it's now available in HD on the Switch. Plus, I finally know what this picture of TV static on the back of some games means. As far as I'm concerned, my GameCube has reached its final form, especially with the Action Replay disc to use Swiss for running Game Boy interface, and for straggling 480i games into 480p. I may sell the other GameCube that's sitting on my shelf. I wouldn't make much money off of it, I'm sure, but I don't need this anymore, and it's better than wasting a perfectly good cube. And then on top, I have a messy charging station. All kinds of wires to charge a bunch of my controllers, and this adorable cat lamp that I've been integrating into the visuals of my videos lately, and a smart speaker that I can't say the name of or it'll spring to life, and I ain't about to risk that while recording. So that's pretty much what I have at the moment, although I do have other ideas I've been playing with for when I feel like I have enough disposable income to do it. Like I mentioned before, I'd like to replace the Retron with something like an AVS, also get consoles that play SNES and Genesis games. Those would likely be the Analog Super NT and the Analog Mega SG. Both of them are high-quality solutions by a reputable company, and in the Mega SG's case, there's also an adapter for Master System and Game Gear available. Plus, it'll work with the Sega CD and 32X if I decide I want to become insane. I think my solution for all that would be getting a piece of wood to cover this hole in my TV stand. I tried looking up shelves for over here, but I could never find exactly what I needed. Most shelves are just too big and cumbersome for what I'm looking for. The PS5 and Xbox Series are coming out soon, and I'm not getting either of them anytime soon. I've got too many PS4 and Xbox One games to occupy my time, so I'm not too concerned with how I'd arrange their successors at the moment. I hope I'll be living in a bigger apartment before I buy one of them, but I am interested in eventually getting another console to put over here. the Sega Saturn. I'm interested in it and what it had to offer over PlayStation, but I'm intimidated by the cost of the games. Sure, I could go Japanese for certain titles, but I do own a couple Japanese N64 games, and they can be intimidating to navigate. Either that, or I would need to get comfortable with the idea of splurging on a few titles, but still, I think it would be worth it. Not for Panzer Dragoon Saga, though. Price charting hurts me sometimes. I'd most likely use the RAD2X to hook this up. These are a series of high-quality, affordable cables for various consoles that take the console's RGB signal and convert them to HDMI. No having to deal with SCART like someone who knows what they're doing, because I don't. But for now, like Nelly told us in 2010, it was only just a dream. But that's not all. In this spare blank space of wall, I think I could get away with adding another thin media shelf like the one I have for my cartridges and other things. Just for more room, that way I could bring cartridges and jewel case games over here and give handheld games their own shelf. Yes, that means you too, PSP games and Danganronpa V3 on the PS Vita. By the way, I have a PSGV in storage, and that's how I was able to play this. The new hypothetical shelf could also potentially house any future Saturn games I get, assuming they're in the big non-Japanese cases. It probably wouldn't look right next to DVD and Blu-ray boxes, but with jewel cases, I think it'd be alright. And that's all I have to show. I've been playing around with this room for over 2 years at this point, and I've had fun doing it. Finally, they made Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer into a real thing. I'm happy with the progress I've made over this time, and it's weird looking at older videos of mine that show my room looking completely different, and that's probably a good thing. Go ahead and comment what your setup is like if you have one, or just tell me what some of your favorite games are, I don't know. Hope you enjoyed me making a scripted video about something other than music, unless this is the first video of mine you're watching. If that's the case, my channel's focus is talking about music both new and old. If you're at all interested in that, give one of my recent videos a watch and subscribe if you like what you see. I'm Cicabeot1, trans gamers rise up, and take care.